afternoon, everybody. I'm Susan Howards, a local Brookline attorney specializing in domestic violence, elder abuse, trafficking, criminal defense. And welcome to the Safety Net, Brookline Interactive Group's show dedicated to domestic violence. But during COVID, we have expanded the issues that we address on this show. Today, we are really fortunate to have one of the preeminent criminal defense attorneys in the state of Massachusetts with us, Jason Chan. Jason is admitted to practice in all state and federal courts in the Commonwealth. He is a graduate of Northeastern undergraduate and New England Law School. He's with the firm of Seed and Chan, and he specializes in white-collar crime, murder, human trafficking, drug trafficking, firearm charges, sexual assault, domestic violence, battery, and other types of criminal. He's a general practice, but he's an expert in all of those areas. He was selected to be part of the merit selection panel for the reappointment of federal magistrate Judge David Hennessy in 2020. He has taught several classes at MCLE, and I understand you've authored a book for MCLE, Attorney Chan. I'm very impressed with that.
Well, thank you. I have contributed to several. I'm on my third one now.
And what is the topic?
So the new topic would be essentially updating the law regarding drunk driving cases.
Okay. And aren't you also a special prosecutor in Worcester County?
Yes, that's also true. That's one of the things that I do.
How can you be a defense attorney and a special prosecutor? Can you explain that? Seems to me they're at odds with each other.
Yeah, so it's all about strong advocacy about the case that you currently have. And then when they have a conflict in some of their cases, they'll reach out to me to see if I'm interested in prosecuting those.
Very exciting. So basically today we're going to talk about the intersect of addiction, alcohol addiction, and domestic violence. And I'm going to let you take it from there because I'm not sure I understand the intersect or that I would ever use an addiction as, it might be an explanation, but not an excuse. So go ahead, Attorney Chan.
Well, Susan, I think the big thing is in terms of the intersection is obviously during the time of COVID has really exacerbated a lot of issues. So anything that wasn't going well at home only kind of became worse as people kind of hung out with each other a good amount. And maybe in the past that people were going out more and there might have been more drunk driving cases, we do have seen that there's been a lot of friction at home that have sometimes led to the police being called. In a lot of those situations, there might be a mental health issue, there might be an alcohol issue. There might not actually be a substance abuse addiction, but a lot of times, as you know in your practice, Susan, how experienced you are, is that alcohol is never a good ingredient when it comes to a tense situation. And a lot of times where alcohol is involved or other substances, it leads to more of an explosive situation that can lead to a dangerous situation, a harmful situation, and domestic violence. So we have been seeing more of that especially during the pandemic.
Jason, have you seen an uptick in domestic violence cases? Has your office received more calls than, say, pre-pandemic?
I'm not sure we've seen more, but we have seen a lot of, I would say at least the same amount of people looking to get restraining orders, really the same amount of people getting arraignment dates. I mean, just the divorce practitioners that I've heard from, that there certainly seems to be an uptick during the pandemic, and especially now where people have kind of gone through the holidays, that they have gotten to a divorce situation. And a lot of times that can be a shocking type of situation where maybe one spouse wasn't expecting it. That could lead to a lot of emotions. And you combine that with alcohol, now you have a potentially an explosive situation.
But given the research that's been done during COVID, isolation was absolutely amplified during COVID. So I'm wondering how the calls can remain the same, because I know in my practice, I get calls from friends or family or even strangers. Somebody passed me a note, said, call you, they're in trouble, can you help? Or I received a call from a clerk at Stop and Shop who had my number. Is this Attorney Howard's? Somebody gave me a note who just came in the store. This is where you're supposed to reach them. So I'm really interested on how they reach you during the isolating times.
Yeah, I think you're exactly right. And what I was trying to say before was I don't think the calls have been any less. I mean, I think you're right that there has been an uptick with these types of altercations. And a lot of times it can be both parties. We represent both the plaintiff of restraining orders and defendants. So it just kind of depends on who hires us first. Obviously, we can't represent both because there is a conflict there, as you could imagine. But there is a lot of arguments and friction out there. And COVID has made it very difficult where people are isolated. They might be now dealing with mental health and depression issues that they may not have had before. The stress of being by yourself and just not being able to get away and have that distance from your family can really lead to issues. And I know that we were talking about even in our own practices and lives that there seems to be less separation now between work and home than ever before. And if
That's
things
for sure.
right, right. And Susan, imagine if things weren't going well at home for those individuals that, and you have no separation, you're working, some people are saying they're working more now than ever. And that just adds to the stress and that just adds to the emotions. And that can really lead to some bad situations.
Particularly if there are two people in the home working. Yes, I mean, I for one, I'm used to getting up, getting dressed, getting out, and being gone for the day.
Right.
This staying and being in court, which now is almost impossible. I think there's so much being done remote, no trials to the end of January, blah, 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 blah. That's really because part of going to court for an attorney, at least for me, is the socialization, to see my friends, to see other attorneys. You sit around, you chitty chat, and you get to know each other. That's not happening now. We're
No.
all on our own, unless we have friends like Jason, who you can reach out and say, listen, I need this kind of attorney, or I need that kind of an attorney. And let me just say that I met Jason. I'd heard about him for many, many years from Sandra Lundy, a family law attorney. I met him through Provisors. Jason is the connector in New England Provisors, as far as I'm concerned. He's amazing. But let me ask you a question. Have you seen more calls during Omicron than you saw during Delta? I don't know if that's a fair question, but I'm just sort of trying to balance the variants to know what to expect, because there's a new variant supposedly out of Cyprus. I don't know what it is, but that's the alert I got today.
Yeah, I'm not sure if it's variant specific, but I can tell you this, Susan. I think what happens is we really don't see how people have a lack of services, right? So the longer that we're in this isolation, it seems as though people are having a harder and harder time to try to get to services that were already depleted in the first place. So they may be going through a mental health crisis, and now they're having difficulty to find a therapist. They may be having a substance abuse crisis, and they can't find a place where they have in-person meetings, which for some people is important. Not all, but for some people is important. So I think for that part of it, it is difficult because the longer that this is happening and the longer where we do not have the services to provide for people to get better or to get into a better mental state, I think that is a huge problem that is often overlooked because I have people who are calling and they just have no one to talk to. They just need someone to talk to, someplace to go. And that's very difficult and sad to see. So I think that's a big issue as this kind of situation keeps being dragged out.
Jason, what do you see the effect is on the kids? Because for some families, the kids are home too. The parents are afraid to send their kids to school. I know my niece has a 4-year-old and she's an attorney and she's exhausted. She's the homeschool, she's the companion, and she and her husband, they're both home. Luckily, they're partners, so they can pretty much stay home. But she is exhausted. This keeps her on the run. She works all night. She gets 2 hours sleep. She's terrified to send a 4-year-old to school. How does it affect the children, let alone remote learning? That's my next question.
Yeah, what a great question. I think it has a huge effect on the children. And just one of my friends was trying to get a therapist for their child, and the waiting lists are ridiculous to try to just
why? I'm hearing that. Why?
There's just so much need. It might be people who never needed therapists in the past. Now they're trying to find them. They're just trying to slot them in terms of, and now it's a little bit easier for therapists to meet with more people in some ways because you can meet with people online. People don't have to travel to come see you. but they're just overwhelmed. I mean, the system is really showing the weakness in terms of not having enough trained professionals in those areas to help people. And as you know, on the extreme other end, where we see where the police might be involved or a domestic violence type of situation, the children are present, or if they're reporting something at school, that something at home's going on, DCF might get involved. And that's when I call you, who's essentially the expert there, to help some of these families to get through these types of crises.
Jason, I have to just interact about DCF. I had a report from an advocate who also works with DCF. I do DCF appeals. So many DCF workers, number one, are out sick. Okay, fine. So many are working remotely. When you call DCF to report abuse or neglect, you get a cell phone number. You call the number for the investigator. They're supposed to respond and do an initial investigation within 2 hours and within 2 days. Sometimes you don't hear back for a week.
Oh, wow. That's
So I don't know what's going on with DCF. There hasn't been much in the press about DCF, but I think that that's going to be the next big wave. I just pray that nothing really happens to a child during COVID, at least till we reach spring, when I hope things will come back to whatever normal is going to be. And I have no idea if that's even a word we should be using, because I don't think we're going to have a normal. It's just going to be post Omicron or something else. But DCF is in big. They need more people to fill the spots, but you have to be trained. You can't just hire a temporary worker.
Right.
You have to have somebody who's trained in the law and doing investigations, and that they're just not able to do it. So what would you say, what resources would you offer to a client who called you, who needed mental health, or somebody who needed childcare, or somebody who can't go to work because the kid's home? What is your office putting out there?
So I think that's a really difficult thing, because like you were talking about, skilled workers in any level, everyone's trying to hire. There's not a ton of them. And then they're also dealing with the same issues that we all are, right? Their child might be sick, or they might be in quarantine. They may themselves not be feeling well. There might be things in their life that's making it difficult for them to help others, or even just to run a business.
Right.
So that's a really difficult thing. So the things that I do and my law partner does, we're part of a lot of nonprofits. So for myself, I'm part of Netted Compassion, which is out in Worcester, which is essentially they run a homeless shelter. And we have people who go to the homeless shelter, whether it's therapists or we have doctors with the vaccines. There's COVID screenings with nurses. We have a trailer shower system that we provide for homeless.
Wow.
Meals on Main Street every Saturday that we try to feed as many people as possible. We have a food pantry, and we have a free clothing store. So those are the things that we're trying to do a lot, is to try to build out some of those services, because there are a lot of people in need. And then my law partner sits on the board of the Chris Herron Foundation, which is a substance abuse recovery type of foundation. And Chris Herron was very famous. He's from Massachusetts, and he's now become an inspirational speaker. He went to Fresno State and played basketball there, played for the Celtics for a short period of time, but all with very bad substance abuse issues. So
and now he's clean?
Yes, he's been sober for many years, started the Chris Herron Foundation, is an inspirational speaker, and puts all the funds that he makes from that into the foundation to help people with substance abuse. And they give out scholarships for people who need it to go to substance abuse. And because that can be also very expensive if you don't have health insurance, if you need to try to get away from your current situation and maybe need to an inpatient rehab, maybe outside of Massachusetts, that can be very expensive for a family who's already kind of losing a primary caregiver, right? And
financial.
Yeah. So that's tricky things.
Yeah, I was just going to ask one more question, because we don't have much time, but the economic impact on domestic violence of businesses closing, the moms and the pops. People, there are plenty of jobs available, but people being sick and they can't go to work. Or the case that I called you about, I had a client in the Worcester area who had been really, really severely beaten and had lost all of her front teeth. And she also lost her kids. I don't know why she lost her kids. We're in court next month. And I hope you're not the prosecutor, because then you'll have to recuse yourself and I'll be upset because I would love you to be the prosecutor. But anyway, and so she couldn't get a job. So we were looking for a low pro bono, which that really doesn't happen, or a low income dentist, and you provided us with a clinic, and apparently she's going there. She has secured a job, but the impact and the peripheral damage from COVID on the vulnerable populations in our state, I think is just, I don't think we know how it has affected most of our vulnerable populations.
Yeah, you're exactly right. It's if your situation was bad, it's made it worse. You know, for the people who have the means to work from home and not necessarily an everyday have to be in front of people type of worker, some have done really well, and obviously there's still challenges there. But for people who can't work, especially in your situation, just think about the amount of time that person is going to need to heal. They may never, right? But hopefully they. But at a minimum, it's going to take time for the physical injuries to heal. And then it's going to take additional time for the mental scars to heal, for them to even get back to a point where maybe they can be functioning. So that is a huge economic toll, because nothing happens in a vacuum. It doesn't just affect that one person, but it's their family, it's their parents, it's their siblings. It's their friends that see someone going through such a horrifying incident, and it's also their children, right, that have a direct impact that affects. So it's a really sad story, and it's not an uncommon one, unfortunately.
Jason, could you send the information on the two organizations you mentioned that you're involved in Worcester, and to us, and we could run it at the bottom? In the last minute, your final words to our audience.
Don't be afraid to get help. We all go through difficult times. There is help out there. It's not easy to find, but don't be afraid to give help. And then if you know someone in need, sometimes people just need someone to talk to. So
call Attorney Jason Chan, Seed and Chan. Your office is on North Beacon Street. Am I correct?
That's correct. Yes.
Is that Brighton, Alston, Boston?
So we're in Brighton. We also have a New Bedford office and one out in Worcester.
Terrific. Attorney Chan, thank you so much for appearing on Brookline Interactive's The Safety Net. And I'm Susan Howards, and hope to see you the next time.
Thank you, Susan. Bye now.